aka the best-selling video game platform in history.
And one of the best video game platforms in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. There's no question about that.
It was really just a Trojan horse DVD player. But,
that turned out to have a lot of great games on it.
That's how I justified buying one.
Arguably the most great games of any system.
Well, we'll see, huh?
Yeah.
Do anybody want to run down how the draft works?
So if you have not listened to us do one of these before, we just do a straight up snake style draft. Somebody gets the first pick, and then that person doesn't pick again until the very last pick of the second round, and then it flips again. And we kind of go on like, what's your favorite game, but also kind of like, you kind of want to make a list that makes sense for you in a weird way. So I don't know. Overall, when we're done, I would like to have like a list that would make a sensible top 25 PlayStation 2 games list, but also each of our individual lists should reflect our personal tastes on that system. So there's a lot of different factors in play, but mostly it's
partly a competition between us.
Yeah. It's mostly just a bunch of weird arbitrary rules to give us an excuse to look at and play a bunch of old PlayStation 2 games, which is, I think, a totally valid way to go about this.
I mean, this is...
And I think, I don't know of anybody else who has determined the top X number of games in a system's library. And
there's not very many lists out there. So the thing is, the nature of lists is arbitrary, and we know this, and this is like us acknowledging that by not bothering to come up with some weird rule set by coming up with the weirdest rule set in order to determine our favorites from this.
There are a couple of rules though as far as selections go. I think the only one, well, actually maybe there's only one, which is that you can't pick a different version of the same game. So if Mike picks Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, I can't pick the original release and be like, they're different games. We've outlawed doing that. So for stuff like Devil May Cry 3, Metal Gear Solid 3, Persona 3, a lot of threes apparently, it's the one version, the definitive version is going to be assumed to be the one that's picked.
We're also we don't count PlayStation 1 games, even though you could play all those on your PlayStation 2.
Right.
We've already drafted those.
We did that. So anyway, so who's going first here?
You're going
first.
I'm going first. Okay, so the basic rule we go is the person that's picking gets like 30 seconds to make their pick.
And then we have 3.5 minutes of discussion.
Yep.
And then we move on.
We'll try and figure out. So I'm going to make my first pick.
Your time has started now.
Oh, I mute this, but I'm just going to let this music play a little bit.
Nice.
Because my first pick is Katamari Damacy.
You fucking bastard.
Wow.
Come on.
That was my first pick as well.
That was my also first pick.
Really? Wow. I felt like even putting that on my list, I was like being a maverick of some sort by even remembering.
That game is joy in video game form.
Yeah, I did.
Soundtrack is coming on vinyl soon.
I did a stream of Katamari Damacy with our pals Anthony Rogers and Morbid Coffee last year, I think, and I played for like an hour and a half, and I beat like the first 6 stages, and just it still feels as good to play it in 2018 as it did in 2002 or whenever it came out. I don't have the exact year in front of me, but it's such a fucking delight to play Katamari Damacy. And this is also the like, there's been a bunch of sequels, and like We Love Katamari is fine, and some of the other ones are also okay, but just like the sense of scale in this game is incredible, especially when you get to the later levels and you're like rolling up pencil erasers, and then you're rolling up bushes, and then all of a sudden you're rolling up people and cars, and then whole continents, and it's just like the way that the game zooms out it's really incredible. And just the soundtrack, the way it looks, the King of All Cosmos's giant bulging codpiece, it's just everything about this game is just really fucking special.
First time I rolled up a person in this game, I thought I was going to die laughing.
Yeah, it's just like, but it's just like such innocent cartoon violence that would be impossible to it's not really violence at all. It's like the people are fine. They're just being rolled up and sent out into outer space to become giant burning balls of plasma.
I mean, it embodies something that I think got lost after the PS2 to a certain extent, which is just weird as shit random games that come out, and you're just like, what the hell is this? This just has, I've never played anything like this before. It just has a really distinctive play style, visual style, overall style, and it's just, yeah.
That style, for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things about the PS2 is it had an intersection of popularity where like anything on the platform would sell a certain number of copies, and the price of game development had not yet gone totally bananas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why you get things like, and now with indie games, we're getting weird stuff again.
It definitely feels like there was a 6 or 7 year chunk during the 360 and PlayStation 3 era where everything was just kind of like a brown shooter because that was what sold, and like that was what those systems were kind of best at. And now, as Joe was saying, with like Steam and like Unity and how cheap even Unreal 4 is for a lot of indie developers to work with, like we're seeing a much broader variety of games in terms of their themes and the art style and everything else. But let's be honest, like this game has probably the best soundtrack in a video game of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, it's such a such a special thing.
I'm surprised that you didn't introduce your pick with just saying nah.
I did. I left the music on so you could hear it.
Yeah. You could have done it yourself.
I could have.
That's how it goes in the soundtrack too.
I'm so mad that you got this game, but I'm also really glad that it's first on our
number
list.
one.
I am too.
I sincerely believe it is the best game on the PS2. I think it is timeless. I think it is really accessible. Like almost anyone can pick it up and play.
Time is up.
It's great. Katamari is a great game.
Yep.
And you're a terrible person.
Sorry.
You are a terrible person, but
I made the right decision.
You did make the right decision. So for my first pick, I'm going to go with Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh.
Damn.
Okay.
Knives Out.
All the hot picks are coming off the board. Not the ones I expected, honestly, but still.
I tried for any of this. Like, I didn't go back and play stuff. I thought about doing it. I just didn't have time. I've been doing a ton of traveling the last 2 months or so. But I'm a huge fan of Ueda's games, and I actually played this. I went to E3 2 different years, and one of those years was when this game came out. And I knew about it and found out it was going to be there, and I was so excited. I actually got to play a bunch of the first Colossus, although I did not defeat it because the guy behind me groused at me that I was taking too long, so I had to get out of line. But I mean, I think as with the Katamari, it's a game that has a singular vision, and it doesn't look like other games. It doesn't feel like other games. It has its own ideas and style. It has a sort of a very interesting story that it's telling you, not obviously. It doesn't hold your hand so much like later games do, and you have a ton of interesting bosses to tackle. They mostly all feel very different. They give you different sort of gameplay styles and different puzzles to try and take down. And the first time that I jumped onto the giant flying boss and flew up into the air, I was just like, my mind was blown about just how cool this was. So.
Yeah. This is another game, like PlayStation 2 was an era when like the scale got blown up to such a degree that like the first time I remember really being impressed by the scale of something was like Ocarina of Time, with just how big the dungeons were.
Mm-hmm.
But like this is like they could put big things on screen and have you interact with them instead of it just being a big space, and that's so much more meaningful than just having a big empty space.
And the space, even though there isn't necessarily a ton of stuff in it per se, it has a feel. It feels like a real space.
Right. Well, it feels it feels like a big empty wilderness that's inhabited just by these handful of
these things.
Colossus.
Exactly. Colossi.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, as you were saying, like there's just a lot of really memorable boss, like it's all boss fights, and so they're all pretty memorable. Like there's the one in the desert that you have to fight in that pops out of the sand, and the big one where you have to make him like hit that big like metal plate in the middle of the thing, and as you said, like the kind of the twist at the end, or the way that the game kind of twists the knife at the end to make you like, oh, like actually I'm the shithead that's going around killing these guys for my own selfish reasons.
You sort of get that vibe before you reach the end.
Yeah.
You start to
but not at the beginning. It's like a thing that sort of seeps
about
in.
it like halfway through, so you're like, maybe.
Like the first couple have like big clubs and weapons and stuff where you're like, oh, this is like a big mean thing, and then later you just like kill a bird and you're like, why did I kill that bird? Like that bird wasn't doing anything.
Because it was there. Yep. It's what humans do, man.
Time is up.
Time is up. Hang on, I was going to show a Colossus here.
You can leave this on for a second while I start. I actually have totally missed Shadow of the Colossus. I have never played that game.
It's pretty good. There's a new version on PlayStation 4, and the high-res version on PlayStation 3 is actually pretty decent as well. So
well, again, I have played over 100 hours of baby.
Nice.
It's Persona 3.
It's a great game.
Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3, that is.
That's a great video game.
It is a really great video game. I think it is also
the last. Either you or Eric would pick the game.
I think it's also the last JRPG that I really, really loved. I think, like, what is that? Was it a 2000?
I forgot I named my character Big Dog.
The last JRPG that I played.
What is that from 2004? When is that game from? I don't remember. That game really broke my brain when it came out because it was so different from any other role-playing game that I'd ever played. With the
it's a dating sim and a role-playing game.
Well, yeah, it is, and that's what's great about it. It's one of those ActRaiser things where it's like if it was just a dating sim, it would be kind of okay. If it was just a dungeon crawler, it would be okay. Oh yeah, that was super late in the life cycle. But just the mixture of the two and the fact that they interact with each other a little bit, and combined with some really weird, fascinating, good music that was really unlike anything that I heard in a video game before. Absolutely. Like I just remember being so weirded out, but also kind of impressed by like the dorm music and the battle music and just the weird J-pop plus hip-hop kind of mashup that didn't make any sense to my brain. But I also really love it. I played the whole game. It took, a huge amount of time, like 80, 90 hours to finish. And I actually went back and replayed it last year on the Vita. And it's still really good. The PSP port, which is what I played on the Vita, is actually maybe the best version of the game because it cuts out all the running around
that
town.
Particular version of this game is the best Persona game and maybe the best JRPG.
Which
maybe
the PSP version.
The PSP version. Yeah. It cuts out like 20 hours of running around town by just making everything menu based.
And also you can play as a female protagonist, which cuts out a lot of the like sexist garbage jokes that are written into the game. Or kind of like turns them around and kind of makes the guys seem more like scumbags instead of just like a cool thing that dudes do, which is really nice.
I should mention in the world of Persona 3 versus Persona 4, I like Persona 3 way, way more than Persona 4. I like the characters, I like the setting, I like the oppressiveness, and for some weird reason, I even like the fact that you spend the whole game in the same dungeon. That kind of works in my brain, and I can't necessarily defend all those things.
At least there's not a super homophobic floor on in Persona 3.
And less homophobic characters.
Yeah.
And less fat jokes and less Persona 4 is fat jokes.
Also, I really like Yukari and Mitsuru, and I like a lot of the characters in this game.
Yeah, also. I really do.
And it's like I said it was like a dating sim, but one of the things that's really special about the series is that like your character doesn't just get stronger by beating monsters and gaining experience points and grinding, but you also get more powerful just by like interacting with people and making friends, and it makes it feel like a much more like, and not realistic necessarily, but it feels like more like those. It makes those relationships feel much more meaningful than they do.
But they feel authentic because they're developed, and you see all the little details.
Right.
They have so much time to breathe because the game is so long, and you have so many interactions with each character.
And not just
the minor ones,
not just your party members, but there's like the old couple that runs the bookstore, and that weird old guy that hangs out in the bar that you.
Oh, I love that guy, the monk.
Yeah, he's awesome, but he has like a really fractured relationship with his son, and he kind of like the more you hang out with him, the more he reveals about himself, and like you said, it feels really authentic, and it instead of just dumping a bunch of exposition in your lap, you kind of have to earn it, and then that has a meaningful interaction with the gameplay mechanics, and it's really good. So
believe it or don't.
Yep. This would have been, if this was the PSP version, this would have been my first pick, but the PlayStation 3 version of this game with all the running around stuff is kind of balls.
You can make it Fez if you want. That's like the one version of this game I never played. All right, who's next?
Joe is next.
I'm next, and I am surprised. I get 2 picks, and they're going to be my top 2, which is kind of surprising.
Huh.
So the first one is my favorite PlayStation 2 game and one of my favorite games of all time, and it is Metal Gear Solid 3.
Yep.
Subsistence version, I guess. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater.
I never would have guessed that based on the way you keep using that as your example game as we're setting up the stream and talking about games you might choose.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 3 is a great game.
It is a great game.
It's probably my favorite Metal Gear.
That's probably true for me.
5
it's all in
is
a
a
dream.
really good case, though. I have dined on many a tree frog.
Chunks of 5 are super good.
Yeah, 5 has its moments for sure, but 3 is just it's really the realization of, I think, what Kojima wanted, even going all the way back to the original Metal Gear on the MSX2. And I recently replayed Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation 1, and it's still a really good game, but it's kind of hard to go back to once you've played.
I played it right before MGS5 came out, and it was like I thought the same.
Yeah,
but it's amazing how little detail there are on people in some of those scenes. You're just like, that's just like a blank head.
Why don't you have eyes?
Yeah, exactly.
I actually kind of like the weird marionette style graphics and
yeah, it doesn't bother me. It was just I did not remember it being like that at all.
Games from that era of console did not have facial animation. Like
very few.
Majora's Mask is one of the only games where the faces actually change when people are talking.
Mega Man Legends has like a lip sync thing, but we're not talking about those games. We're talking about Metal Gear Solid 3, which is fantastic. Speaking of
great boss fights.
Yeah. The series never got back to having boss fights like this game. The BB core were okay, but in 5 it was like,
look at all these bees.
Yeah, the bees, and of course everybody who thinks of the end, and not only the fight with the end, but that there are 2 alternate ways to get around fighting the end, even if you don't want to like hunt him down. So one way, if you're not aware, there's an early scene where you see him from like across a river, and you can just snipe him. Like you can just shoot him in the head, and he dies. And then you end up fighting the Ocelot unit again in that spot where you normally fight the end. Or you can stop playing the game for 2 weeks. And when you come back, he's died of old age, and you just like find his corpse.
Right.
Yep.
Or you can do it the classic way and just hunt him in a giant open space through many forests, and you have to use his parrot as a tell. And yeah, it's really...
Actually, the first time I played that, I didn't use the parrot. I used the thermal goggles, and his footprints leave a heat signature, and you can track the
thermal goggles as well. Yeah.
It's a really cool, a lot of really cool mechanics in that fight.
And even the fight with the boss is like fantastic.
Yeah, in the flower field.
It's a great fight, and it's staged really cool. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true of a bunch of the fights. So the end is the same thing, right? They build this whole area just for you to fight the end.
Yeah, I think that it's like some people prefer some of the other games because they don't like having to deal with the some of the more survival aspects of it. Like you have to, sometimes you take a gunshot and wound and you have to like cut the bullet out and apply bandages and Stipics and stuff like that. Or you have to mess with your camo, or you have to kill and eat things, or else your stamina stops regenerating.
Yeah, but I remember at the time, I remember the time being worried about that it would override things. And I usually don't like stuff like that, like especially the modern crop of survival style games. I'm just not into it all. But it really didn't bother me at all in this game.
We just have to say that ladder scene is one of the greatest moments in all of video games.
Also, look, you can open up your inventory and look at your calorie mate and rotate it and play with it.
We all know how much we like.
Or you can shoot a tree frog and then you can eat it, which is really great.
Or you can take rotten. You can keep food until it rots and then feed it to enemy soldiers and they'll go puke their guts out.
Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of just really cool things in this game.
Yep.
Also has the best mechanics of all the Metal Gears.
In fact, there's another boss. When you this is gonna be the last thing I say. When you fight the Fear, if you can easily beat him by feeding him poison food.
Right. Yep. You can walk down that river and see all the guys you shot in the balls.
Yep.
It's a lot. I shot a lot of guys in the balls.
A lot of the guys in the balls. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We see how you are.
Yeah.
All right. Next pick.
So my number 2. So this is interesting. I felt like
Joe, you have 30 seconds that we could use to talk about Metal Gear Solid 3 more.
Well, we already went like 15 seconds into it.
I felt like this next pick was one that, even though it's the worst version of this game, it's unlikely that we'll draft a system that has a better version at any point.
Just fill it in here, or
you should just fill it in. It's Resident Evil 4.
I beat you to it.
Resident Evil 4. So again, the PS2 version is literally the worst version. If you have your choice of any version of this game to play, do not play the PS4 or the PS2 version. Play the PS4 version or the Steam version, or the Wii version is actually super good.
Yeah, I mean, the PS2 version is not that bad.
The Steam version.
It's still a great game. It's still a great game, but it's like even it added like one extra mode from the GameCube version, but like it loses a lot of graphical things that the GameCube version, like the GameCube version had like real-time light sourcing stuff where you could shoot out lights and then like bad guys wouldn't see you. And that's gone from the PS2 version because it couldn't handle the real-time lighting stuff. And so
also,
there's like some stuff
it takes place in this little window, which I don't think the GameCube version did.
Yeah, well, the GameCube version didn't have a widescreen option either, so
yeah, I was gonna say
the PS2 version is not a true widescreen option; it's just a stretched, like anamorphic thing. Anyway,
it looks okay on a widescreen TV.
Just like pay $15 to play it on Steam. But
yeah, the Steam version is really fantastic.
Yeah, Resident Evil 4 was a big paradigm shift in the Resident Evil series, and some people didn't like it, and some people still don't like it because they blame Resident Evil 6 on Resident Evil 4, which is not really fair. I don't think that's fair.
Resident Evil 6 wouldn't have happened without Resident Evil 4, but Resident Evil 6
the series might have just died.
Sure, I mean that's how numbers work, but come on,
with Gears of War, so.
Yeah,
right, so, exactly. I mean, that's what I was going to say. Is that it wasn't just a paradigm shift for.
That's not a word, buddy.
Paradigm shift.
Hey, I got a lot on my plate right here.
It's true.
Unless you're going to pay for me to hire a production assistant, then you got to give me
juggle.
some slack. But anyway, it's not just a big change in the way that the Resident Evil series worked, but it really established a lot of like the baselines for third-person shooters going forward.
Yeah, third-person.
Yeah, like especially you didn't see a lot in the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox era, but in the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era, like the influence of this game was everywhere. Partially due to this game's success, and partially due to the huge success of the first Gears of War. But
also, how many other games can you think of where you can German suplex someone and their head explodes? Not many, not any, maybe. So let's see. Brock Lesnar can't do that, but Leon Kennedy can.
Yeah, it does like some really basic things, like the way you shoot guys' heads off and the guys become more dangerous. Like there's some basic subverting of your expectations, and like there's a lot that it makes you use your tools in a lot of really interesting ways. I think the combat and counter design in this game is like some of the best in any video game of all time. The various areas in which you fight guys and the ways that you kind of have to navigate yourself into position to fight them effectively, as you see me not doing in this clip.
And the Mercenaries mode is super dope.
Yeah, the Mercenaries mode's amazing.
Which they don't have that in Resident Evil games anymore, and that kind of bums me out.
Co-op Mercenaries in Resident Evil 5, baby.
Yes.
Yep. It's real good.
So yeah, I don't know how much time I have left, but this game is okay. This game is super good, and if you haven't played it somehow, like get the Steam version for $15 or wait for a Steam sale and get it for $5 and play through it. The only last thing I have to say is your right hand comes off.
All right, Mike, 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, so Katamari and Persona were my two top tier choices, and after that, there's just this huge spread of stuff that could kind of come anywhere on my list.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to follow my heart and pick Final Fantasy X.
Nice.
Oh, no.
That's a final
That is a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah. I really, really, really like that game. So Final Fantasy, and I go way back, played all the ones on the original Nintendo that you could, which is 1, and then the ones on the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation and all that. And Final Fantasy X is the first game where the entire world was built out in 3D, I think. I don't think they did it in 9.
It is.
9 still had pre-rendered single style.
And it was the first one with voice acting, which obviously, it's hit and miss, let's just say. But it does have, what's his face, Marcus Venus guy as a hilarious Hawaiian
John DiMaggio.
John DiMaggio, sports ball player.
It's pretty cute at first, and then by the end of the game, you just want to fucking suplex him until his head explodes.
Anyway, what's actually really good about the game is, first of all, it's got a really cool world, which is simultaneously like just beautiful, tropical, fun to go around in, but at the same time filled with death and despair in a way that's kind of interesting. And it has a story that has, I think, one of the most coherent and actually kind of interesting stories in the world of Final Fantasy games.
It's definitely one of the most coherent ones.
Yeah, and it actually has like character development and things in a way that I think it pulls it off. It also has mechanics that I think are my favorite in the series, like the switch away from the active time battle system to this super fast-paced, like a turn-based battle system, but where you can manipulate the turn order and
swap characters in and out, and
swap them in and out. And I think that's really cool. I love the upgrade system. The Sphere Grid is my favorite. It's like a board game plus an RPG at the same time.
The Sphere Grid is great because it gives you the flexibility of a Final Fantasy VII while also letting you sort of define character roles like Final Fantasy VI. And it's just like, it's like a really well-balanced... it's really well-balanced between like the two extremes of the more classic Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
Actually, I said that Persona 3 was the last JRPG. So I should clarify, the last new JRPG that I'd played. I've since played Chrono Trigger, but that not like when it came out, like just.
Right.
But Final Fantasy X was the last new JRPG that I sunk like tens of hours into. Like this is kind of where I dropped off with seeing a lot of time into JRPGs. But I sunk like 50 hours into this game. And I just want to say, like, screw dodging those lightning bolts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Also, fuck Blitzball.
Yeah, don't do that either. You don't really have to do the shitty part. There's stuff about this game I cannot defend, but for the most part, you don't have to do it. I think that the voice acting adds more than it takes away.
I think that's true.
Rough. It was their first outing, but come on. I seriously don't have any problem with that scene, except that I don't want anyone to ever watch me play through it because that would be embarrassing. But like, it's actually a scene that makes sense.
It does. It's supposed to be fake
laughing.
Yeah,
it's supposed to.
It's actually one of the few scenes where the voice acting is appropriate for the way that the script is written. I wish the rest of the game that doesn't necessarily live up to the script in places.
I wish they could have recast Titus as basically anyone other than Ratchet.
Yeah. Auron has a cool coat.
Auron is super cool. He's awesome. He's who I want to be now because apparently I'm his age, basically. Anyway, I love this game a lot. I've played it a bunch of times. One time I even did the whole crazy monster arena thing because I had lots of free time. And so that's why I picked it, even though there's tons of other good games.
Nice. Okay. So now I have 30 seconds to figure out. I'm in a similar boat to
Eric, I'm very upset you didn't name Titus Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre. I'm gonna go with Silent Hill 2.
God damn it!
Yes.
How's it feel, Eric?
That was number 2 on my list. So.
I have played many Silent Hill games, and I think Silent Hill 2 is the best at capturing the sort of feeling that I think they try to go for of, sort of weird horror, unease, unsettling situations, and
it's meant to put you in a situation that should seem normal, like a small town, and then subvert those expectations at every single turn. Yeah,
exactly.
Sometimes they do it fast in a way that's really upsetting, and sometimes they do it slowly in a way that you don't necessarily notice how evil everything is getting until you're like knee deep, and then it's like it all kind of catches up to you at once.
Right.
Like dropping down that infinite hole in the historical society, and
right. Yeah, I was gonna mention the trip down the stairs in the historical society. I mean, it opens with exactly that unsettlingness, because you end up outside town. You have to walk through the woods to get into town because it's blocked off. And as you're walking through town, they start fucking with you by making it sound like something is following you, but nothing ever happens in that part. And so you're just
the fog coils around you like a living weird creature.
Yeah, they're just establishing the whole world, and then you end up inside the town, and you start walking along the street, and like some fucking weird ass doll thing like comes sliding out from under a car, and just like
all you have is a board with a nail in it.
Yeah, and moves in the most unsettling, weird way.
It's like a bad stop motion animation monster.
Exactly, and you're just like, what the fuck is that? And does it gonna hurt me?
Phil Tippett made
how do I
something
deal
that's
with
coming after you.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole sort of fucked up part of it where, like, if you have different endings, if you spend too much time sort of obsessing over your wife, there's a whole part where you've in the ending where it's basically you commit suicide.
If you look at the knife too many times in your inventory, that drives toward that ending.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's sort of there's echoes. I thought of this game when I was playing Resident Evil 7 at times, because when you're sort of wandering around in the house at the beginning, you sort of run into your wife. I got sort of flashbacks to the scene where you meet the woman whose name I can't remember, who is is also sort of down in this dank dungeon-y
Maria
area.
Isn't it?
Maria, I think that's right.
Your wife's name is Mary, and her name is Maria.
Right.
Just met a girl named Maria.
Exactly.
What do you do with her?
Yeah. God, you don't even want to know.
Yeah.
And
so
and I only have like 20 seconds left, but I gotta say, also Pyramid Head.
Yeah.
Joe and I had a really long. We did a stream of this for like an hour and a half, and we just talked. I just was completely like effusive in my praise of this game. Just how brilliant it. Like the ideal for me of Silent Hill is like this place that sort of draws out the weird psychosis in everybody, and for James, it's that his wife was sick and that he may have helped her like end her life, and he doesn't know how to deal with the guilt of it. And Pyramid Head is the physical representation of this guilt, and him returning to this town is him like sort of like psychologically eating himself alive, and the town gets more evil the closer you get to the end, and it's just such a tragic and like really beautiful way to do it. And like the voice acting is super awkward in a way that I really like too. I fucking love everything about this game. It's such a great, it's one of my favorite pieces of horror fiction, period. It's filled with delightfully unsettling,
and I also
like running down the stairs forever.
And I love that you can like change the balance of the difficulty, so that way you don't have to deal with the combat, because the combat kind of sucks, and it's the thing that holds up the least, unfortunately. But,
up a ladder or down the stairs, the PlayStation 2 had games for everyone.
Okay, Eric's got 30 seconds.
Am I up? No, Mike's up.
Pick.
No, Eric, you're up twice.
I'm up twice?
You have 2 picks.
Oh, God.
I just picked Final Fantasy.
Okay, how about I pick...
How about you pick?
How about I pick Dark Cloud 2?
Oh, nice. That's a good pick.
Yeah.
Kind of hoping
I've heard a lot about that game, but I've not played it.
Dark Cloud 2 is it's like a dungeon crawler kind of thing.
An action RPG,
so there was the original Dark Cloud was this weird game that was also kind of an action RPG, and then you would get like bits and pieces of a world, and then you kind of had to reassemble that world. And the art style was not super great.
Geomod system or something like that?
Geomod is Red Faction, I think.
It's Geo something.
Diorama.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you kind of have like a slight bit of control over how you reassemble the towns, but I think in general there's like it's kind of like puzzle pieces that you have to slot back in. But this game like totally did away with the art style and put in this kind of cartoony cell-shaded look, and the dungeon crawling's a lot better, and there's a little bit more flexibility in how you rebuild the world, because you start out in the city and it's all walled off and it's like this kind of steampunky place. And you talk to people and they're like, man, it's been a really long time since the trains ran anywhere. And that's because like the outside world has mostly disappeared and you still are kind of like collecting pieces and rebuilding the world. But it's also got all this crafting stuff in it that's really cool. Like you find all these orbs, and then you can like put the orbs in your sword to make or it's not a sword, it's a wrench in this game. Cause you're a mechanic.
The Monica has a sword.
Yeah, the girl has a sword, but I don't think you can't play her until you finish the game once, I think. Or can you play as her later in the game?
Switch to her later on.
It's been a long time. This game came out in 2004, and I started a new playthrough and got about 4 hours in.
It's a very long game.
It's a very long game. I think that the biggest problem I had with it is that going back to it is that there's a lot of like downtime between the dungeon crawling stuff, but the dungeon crawling still feels pretty good.
There's also too much dungeon crawling. It's
it's really long.
So many levels.
For a dungeon crawler, there's too much.
Well, just because I really like the town building segments, and I wish that the game was weighted just a little bit differently. Like I would love to play a version of this where it just has half as many dungeon crawling levels in between new areas.
Yeah, I don't really have a huge problem with the amount of dungeon crawling, because I like going back to it. The third person combat is like, it's probably like a B or a B minus in 2018 terms, but in 2003 terms it was like an A. So like time has eroded some of those things. Although playing this on PCSX2, I will say that playing this at high resolution, like it looks fucking incredible. Like this is a game that I guess it wouldn't come out on Steam, but Sony could, if somebody was willing to put a little elbow grease into it, could up-res and put out on PlayStation 4 today, and it would still.
Well, there is a version of it on PlayStation 4 that's
it's a port. Oh, is it not? I thought it was just the PlayStation 2 version and via emulation.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I believe that it's like it is the PlayStation 2 version, but I think it might be up-resed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely up-res. They up-res all those old, the ones that are available.
But
this game also has a system where you have to take pictures of things in order to get inspirations for your inventions.
30
so you
seconds.
have to like when you're fighting bosses, you have to pull out your camera and be like, well, what if I wait for him to do this attack and take a picture?
And then you can learn more attacks and or figure out how to counter their attacks or how to build things to counter their attacks. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I like this game a lot. It's super charming and fun, and building towns is really great. And the dungeon crawling is fun too. It's just that there's so many hours of it.
There's a little like spiritual successor to ActRaiser thing kind of going on with the Dark Cloud series. I wish that there was more of these. This game definitely could use a Final Fantasy 12 just came out on Steam with like a fast forward feature, and this game would benefit from that. I feel like a little bit, but it's still pretty damn good.
Yep.
All right. Well,
30 seconds for your next pick.
How about I pick this game, the best driving game of all time, in my opinion.
Oh man,
is it Burnout 3?
Yeah, it's Burnout 3. Burnout 3 Takedown.
So man, this game is fucking great.
By the time we're done, Eric, I'm going to be wanting to trade for your list.
Kurt, you're right.
Yeah,
this game is fucking great.
This is definitely my favorite arcade racing game ever.
Yeah, it's my favorite racing game ever, period, I think. Like Burnout Paradise has its charms, like the city that they created it's really small and tight, and like some other open world racing games have like really jagged edges that you get caught on and stuff, and I think the track design in that game is really spectacular.
It's pretty smooth, yeah.
But this game...
like the sentence I've read the most in the last week is why didn't they remaster Burnout 3 instead?
They should do both.
Pretty much
There's no reason they can't do both.
Yeah.
But
Probably because it would require licensing a whole other soundtrack.
Yeah, I guess they could just put some new. EA has a bunch of music licensed.
Just don't care about the soundtrack.
Yeah, the soundtrack in this game is not iconic in the way that the Burnout Paradise soundtrack is.
I just want that Franz Ferdinand song.
Okay. They probably still have that. Was in like every Madden and NHL game.
That was in every game
that they
guess
put
how
out.
many sports games I had for my PlayStation 2.
I owned a lot back then. I played a lot of sports games back then. But anyway, none of those games are Burnout 3 Takedown.
Right.
Which
this game is the crazy sense of speed and the satisfaction of wrecking the car.
It's the feeling of like the amount that your car moves when you move the analog stick is like. It's perfect. It's difficult. It's like such a hard thing to describe, like game feel or whatever. But like the kinematics of the way that your car like dodges and moves when you hit the analog stick just feels so fucking good. It's like it's just the right amount of stickiness to the track, because like more realistic games, like your car is really sticky until it's not sticky at all. But this game, like the suspension and the traction and everything, just it feels really, really good. And then I love the
crash mode.
Crash mode's great. I actually think that the biggest thing that's missing from like Burnout Paradise is the way that you build boost in this game in the regular races, where you like drive on the wrong side of the road, or you like have those narrow misses, or you take down your opponents and then you build boost, and then that's what lets you move faster. So it really rewards you for driving in a risky way, and it makes it so much more fun than just trying to be instead of just trying to memorize the best lines in a game. It's like you can drive like total shit and get rewarded for it, and then just boost your way back into first place, and it's great.
It pushes you to drive as risky as possible, so that you can then boost and be even more out of control.
Yes, absolutely.
So is this still the best? This is not the best version of this game, though, right? Like
I think the Xbox version is better.
The Xbox version is better.
I would say that there's probably not a marked difference between the two. Not like the difference between like Resident Evil 4 on GameCube and PlayStation 2.
That's correct.
So there's no extra modes or extra tracks.
Also, hey, do you guys remember when all racing games ran at 60 frames per second and how much better that felt than like 30 frames per second, which is what it was on the Xbox
Playing a
360?
racing, I usually don't obsess about frame rate, but racing games feel way slower.
Oh yeah, that's the time when you need it.
And also, like, this game, fantastic track design. And like Kurt was saying, we mentioned the crash mode, which I'm going to skip ahead to here. But it's like this weird puzzle thing that you take your hit and then you try and like go into slow-mo and control your car as you kind of like hit other things and then make them crash into other things. And then they give you they add up a score at the end.
Sometimes you have to like avoid a section of cross traffic to make sure you get to the next one because there's more crashing opportunities there and so on.
Very cathartic
puzzle.
Yeah.
Time is up.
Okay.
Burnout
3, great.
Hell of a game.
Yeah, it's a hell of a game. I'm surprised I got it. I'm really glad that I got it at this point.
That's good.
Because I was panicking because I couldn't think of what to pick, but
so my next pick is Ratchet and Clank Going Commando.
Oh yeah, I think that's the best call for this series.
Yeah, I sort of noodled on it for a little bit, trying to decide between that and
that's the second one or the third one?
That's the
second one. So it's the first one that really added the weapon growth and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that the games,
which I think really makes that series stand out.
It's really important in a game where the cool weapons are the biggest draw. I think that the games get more complex in a good way as the series goes on, but they kind of lose some of their charm. So I think the first game is the one that has like the most charm and maybe the best story for what that's worth. But the second one, they added all the really cool, important stuff to the gameplay mechanics, as well as the greatest weapon ever conceived in every video game ever, the one and only Bouncer.
The Bouncer, exactly. A fully upgraded Bouncer just...
It's weird. That's Mike's next pick, too.
So many grenades everywhere around you. And it's just a glorious amount of destruction that just goes bananas. There's a fight, I think it's in this game. It's either in this game or in Up Your Arsenal, where one of the final fights is in a elevator shaft as it's going up. And I had a fully upgraded bouncer with so much ammo in it that I just like let fly, and it was just chaos. There was just like nothing survived more than about 2 seconds. It's just grenades going off everywhere.
I think of this game, I think of the bouncer, and I think of beautiful skyboxes.
Yeah, beautiful skyboxes. I've always had a real love of this whole series, and I definitely think this is one of certainly the best PS2 one.
I think it's the sweet spot on the PS2 to the point where I don't think I'm actually going to draft another game. Like this is the one.
Yeah.
If I was picking, I would probably go with Up Your Arsenal because I really love the spherical worlds and
the
like
spherical
how
worlds
weird
are pretty great.
That
was the
feels
other reason.
Like this was like a test case for Mario Galaxy in a kind of a weird way. Like I really like that gimmick, and I feel like everything else, like it's really hard for me to distinguish between the 3 Ratchet and Clank games. They all kind of blend together in my mind, but they're all really good. And like apparently that collection that came out on PS4 recently is really solid. So you can play like super high res, 60 frame per second versions of these games for relatively cheap.
It always worth.
Speaking of that,
the
first one was remastered or redone in
remade
conjunction with the movie that came out. And so it's more like the later games now. And so it's super good too now.
Yeah, I love this series. I've enjoyed every one. I haven't got the PS4 one, but I think I've played basically all the rest. And they're always good. They do get a little samey once you've played 8 of them, but I mean, what series?
Are there 8 of these now?
Oh, at least.
Yeah, there's something like that.
But one of them was
there's
that
a few
weird
that are
multiplayer thing, right?
Yeah, there's a couple that are
a
couple of the later ones that are different. Yeah, All for One is different, and there's another one.
There are at least 8 that are basically just plain old Ratchet and Clank games.
Yeah,
there's like
there are 4 on PS2.
There's one on PSP.
There's Deadlocked,
it's like you
There's
play
2
just
big ones
Clank.
and 2 small ones on PS3.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of these games. I don't like. For me, 2 and 3 is like Mega Man are the ones that you probably should at least check out.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The only one I've played is Deadlocked because Kurt gave it to me for this year's Christmas exchange, and I liked
that game's also good.
That's a cool game, but a little different.
Yeah, it's a little more combat focused.
Gets more flack than it deserves. It's solid.
Yeah.
I totally agree. All right.
But this is a great, or well, whoever's next has got 30 seconds. But I was gonna say this is a great time to highlight that, like these franchises that started on PlayStation 2 and sort of grew, the PlayStation 2 had so many really great franchises that like grew up with the system, like Ratchet and Clank and Silent Hill and Persona and Prince of Persia and Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid and God of War, and it's just like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. Just anyway. What have you got for us, Mike?
Yeah, well, Eric, I really appreciate your choices, Dark Cloud, Burnout, and Kurtz. And I could have picked some of those, but that's not how it happened. So I'm going to go with Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time.
That's good. That's a really good game.
And I think for me it's the best of those.
Oh, it's definitely the best of those games. Okay. First of all, I'm an old school Prince of Persia.
This one doesn't have any Godsmack in it, though.
No, it does not.
You could remove the though from that comment.
That game is better than its reputation, except for the metal thong that one wears, which is equally as bad as its reputation would.
I think all 3 of those games are good, but this one is my favorite.
So first of all, old school Prince of Persia fan. Played the original on the PC. I even played Prince of Persia 2 on the PC,
How do you
and
feel
that
about
game fucking sucks. I love rotoscoping. And so
all the rotoscoping all the time.
Prince of Persia 3, when it came out, it basically ushered in the modern kind of 3D action platformer. Like the Tomb Raider and Uncharted games of today can be traced back absolutely to this.
They have more in common with this game than they do with their early ancestors and the Tomb Raider 1 and 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like this was the game.
There weird Prince of Persia 3D in between.
There was.
Persia 2.
We're not going to talk about that game ever again in our lives.
Okay.
This game is notable for a couple of reasons. First of all, it made smooth action platforming in 3D not only work really well, but look really good doing it. Like they just did such stunning work on the animation.
The acrobatic feel and look of just moving around is so
parkour.
good.
before parkour was parkour.
Yeah,
blending all the ways that you move together, like so that it just looks amazing all the time.
Wall run to jump to swing to wall run to all that stuff is great.
Yep. Which is not something games did prior to that, really. Like there are always pretty clean breaks in the animation when you would change what you're doing.
This was 2003, by the way.
This is also the first game that I can remember that had an integrated tutorial. Like when you just start playing, and they're like, "Hey, there's a wall here. Hold the bumper to climb up this wall." And like we take that stuff for granted now, but it was pretty new at the time.
Also has like a kind of an early like Batman Arkham Asylum style combat thing kind of going on.
It does.
Yeah, the combat is maybe not the part
but...
that we're gonna brag about. Like
no.
it
was really good in 2003, even though it feels kind of shitty by modern standards.
I would say it's serviceable. The one thing
there was too much of it.
There was too much of it.
You had too many. You had too many being stuck somewhere and having dudes warp in,
spawning, sand bad guys just showing up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. So obviously, what I love about this game, aside from the fact that it's fun to see, like the beautiful vistas, which at the time were, it was a really gorgeous game for the era.
And in high res mode and PCSX2, this game still looks really good.
I just love.
There's an HD collection of these, isn't there? For
I don't know.
360 and PS3.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
It goes the other way. You can unlock Prince of Persia Classic in this game.
You can.
I love just stringing together the different moves. Like I think they did a really good job of making the moves fun to do, but also readable. Like if you play an Uncharted game and you're climbing, sometimes it's pretty hard to tell what you can or can't climb on and which way you should go. This is more of a game in the sense that like there's always this fixed distance you can jump, and like it's pretty easy to identify the building blocks of the level and know what you're supposed to do, so that it mostly comes down to execution or plotting your path through the level. So
time.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a trilogy for
that is true.
Sands of Time, Warrior Within, and Two Thrones in HD.
Yeah, this game's really cool. The rewind thing is also like really fucking cool. We didn't bring it up.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the rewind.
It's a really great gimmick that they pulled off really well, and it's much better than like the traditional like lives and then game over mechanic. It's a good workaround for that stuff.
Any of these games are
fine. It gives you a little bit of risk reward too.
Yeah.
They're all good, but this is the one you should play.
We're cutting into Joe's selection time.
That's okay. That gives him some time to think about it. One more thing that I want to say is that almost all these old games have inverted camera controls that are opposite of what modern camera controls are by default. And so in all these videos, you'll see me struggling to fucking find my footing with the camera. In some cases, it's because the camera is not great. Also, like it doesn't track your character very well, which is kind of the case I found in this game. But in some cases, it's literally just because I cannot wrap my mind around the fact that like it's like the opposite of what you would think a modern third-person game should be. So anyway,
any modern game I start, I go right to the options and switch
it back to the PS2 version
because I'm so used to it.
It goes. It's really weird because it's like the Wild West back then, where like some games inverted is some other games normal, and so even just looking at the options, you can't figure out which way right on the analog stick means
the stick and then switch
until you've actually tested it out. It's really weird.
Right. Well, I just invert the y-axis. I don't invert the z-axis.
Yeah, people that invert the x-axis are crazy.
In some cases, the x-axis is also inverted in these games.
It's true.
It's really like I said, it's just the Wild West.
Weird x-axis controls for the camera.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I hope I'm getting this time back, Kurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
What's you are?
It's going to be God Hand.
Ah. Excellent.
I am not. I am surprised it took this long for that.
I'm really glad that you picked this game because I like this game a lot and I wanted to be on the list. I don't think I was going to pick it myself.
Well, I suspected, much like when we drafted for the Super Nintendo, and I kind of knew nobody was going to pick Demon's Crest. I kind of knew nobody else was going to pick God Hand. So
I know once we get closer to the end, I might have considered it, but
this is a game.
I will note this is a game I have and have not played. So
you should play this game. It's super good.
This game is something else.
This is a game. So this is one of those games where it's like I can legitimately tell you that there is no other game like God Hand that I've ever played, and I've played a pretty fair amount of video games.
I think you're right.
And it was the last game from Clover Studio, who would kind of more or less go on to become Platinum Games after their messy divorce from Capcom.
Shinji Mikami.
Yeah, Shinji Mikami. So this is a Shinji Mikami joint, but that was like it was like Shinji Mikami and Hideki Kamiya and Atsushi Inaba, I think is his name, and there's a bunch of Capcom's really like A+ dudes left Capcom after this game, and this game. This is the game that I was like, this was the first game that I was like, I'm going to replay that to make sure it's as good as I remember before I go drafting it. And I initially planned to just play it for like an hour, and I ended up spending about a week just beating I just beat it again.
It's a bear. It is a hard-ass game.
It's a hard-ass game, and one of my earlier picks, Resident Evil 4, which is also a Shinji Mikami joint, has an adaptive difficulty where if you screw up a section a number of times, it will just automatically make it easier for you. This game, and it doesn't tell you that's like a hidden feature. This game has a similar thing that is presented. If you look in the lower left of the video, there's a little level 1 with a skull there. The better you play, the harder the game gets. So the better you do, you go up to level 2, level 3, and then level die. And I didn't spend a lot of time on level die, but when you get to level die, like some of the mechanics change.
You're gonna die.
Yeah, you're gonna die. Some of the mechanics in terms of stunning and stuff change, and there's actually a really great video that went up recently from a YouTube channel called Turbo Button. It sort of explains some of the systems in this game and why it's still so good. It turns out actually that Dark Souls is the god hand of action RPGs. That's actually the so the big draw for me in this game is that it's totally customizable. I say as Eric goes into the options. Oh, he's not going into the thing.
I was trying to change the stick. I was trying to invert the camera controls, but I couldn't in this.
There are no camera controls. Nope. There's no camera control in this game.
Like it or lump it.
So the big thing is that as you learn more moves and buy more techniques and find more techniques, you can assign them to either any part of your combo or any button that you use for an attack. So any attack can go any place, and you have a combo that gets longer, and I think it maxes out at 7 attacks is your max combo.
Yeah. And some of them have guard break, and some of them...
Right. Some of them guard break, some of them launch, some of them juggle, some of them dodge high attacks from the enemies. And fitting them together in a way that works.
I was skipping around trying to find it, and I finally did.
Yeah. So. Some of the attacks you could just front load super powerful attacks, but they'll stagger enemies, and then the follow-ups won't connect.
Right.
Or sometimes in the second to last slot, you'll put a move that you think is really great, but it staggers enemies and it doesn't connect. And so, I just...
That's time for this one.
Is it
okay,
really?
Well,
wow, that was fast. I was just going to say that having gone back to this game, I could not play through it again today because I find that the distance from the camera to the character to be utterly suffocating. And that's why I went into the controls early, because I was hoping I could zoom out a little bit, and I couldn't, and it was really infuriating. Like I said, it's super claustrophobic. If there was a widescreen mod, like if it just was 16:9 and you had that extra screen real estate, it would help a lot. But I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a lot of really fucking amazing shit in this game that I cannot believe that no one else has adapted into any other third-person action game.
There's no other game like it.
Nope,
it's our indie god hand revival.
So, yeah, really, seriously.
It's got to be coming, right? It's got to be coming. Somebody out there is thinking about it. Yeah, somebody's working on that.
Also, soundtrack, amazing. Moving on.
Real good soundtrack. Joe, what's next?
Speaking of really good soundtracks, I guess my next pick is going to be my favorite licensed soundtrack on the system. And it's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3.
Good choice.
So this is, to me, still the peak of the Tony Hawk series, which is the peak of skateboarding games, which is the peak of extreme sports games. Just sort of...
Not BMX Triple X? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want some triangular polygonal boobs,
check it out, man. I put a cowboy hat on Tony Hawk, so... I don't know, that Dave Mirra game's pretty good. I agree, although for me it's Tony Hawk 2.
I'm torn. I love Tony Hawk 2, but this one has the revert, which lets you string together half-pipe trips, and I prefer half-pipe tricks overall. There are bits that I like better about 2, but 3's a real good game.
Yep,
it's got a bunch of great levels. Yeah. It's got a couple of classic levels. It adds the revert. The soundtrack is awesome. It's soundtrack with like Henry Rollins Band and AFI.
Is this the one with Mastodon in it?
I think that's
be.
4.
Is it 4 maybe?
I'm not sure. Like Ozo Motley and Cut Chemist, and like just a really great cross section of different like old good Red Hot Chili Peppers, like the Ramones, you know. But yeah, this is another one that I went back to not that long ago, like maybe a year ago. I actually, and interestingly enough, this is another game I didn't actually play on the PS2. I played the GameCube version quite a bit. And that's the version that I always had. But this is a case where I think they're basically identical. You can unlock Wolverine in this. I think Darth Maul you can unlock.
Although in 2 you could get Spider-Man, which is a better skateboarder than Wolverine.
Yeah, that's true.
Makes more sense.
Yeah.
But this is one of those games. This is one of those games where I just cracked open the bones and sucked out the marrow. Like everything, every tape on every character, every skill point, every skater in the game was maxed out, got all the goals, got all the hidden stuff. And for me, it's the peak of this type of game. And I
had a friend who did that for me. I went away for a few days and came back, and he unlocked and maxed out like 8 skaters.
This is okay. So this is the one not with Mastodon, but with Del the Funky Homo Sapiens.
Yeah, Del the Funky Homo Sapiens.
You got to brush your teeth.
Wash your ass.
Yeah.
You got to wash your ass if you must.
Yeah.
My son loves that song.
It's a great song.
It's a great game. Tony Hawk, and 2 and 3 are the only ones you really need, and it's a crying shame that they screwed up things so badly when they tried to come back to the series and remaster it.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of Tony Hawk games that I never really messed with. Like there's the American Underground ones, and like most of those, like there's like the review score bell curve for Tony Hawk is like 2 and 3 are the highest, and then like everything else is kind of like below that a little bit. But I feel like a lot of those games are probably still totally playable. So if you wanted a good Tony Hawk game made by Neversoft, then you could still play them maybe if you haven't played all of them, because like this was kind of the last one that I really sunk a ton of time into.
American Underground is alright, and Tony Hawk.
Wait, there's American Wasteland, and then there's Underground.
Yeah.
And Underground 1 and 2 I think are perfectly playable games.
Thug is perfectly playable. And there's also another one that's actually
Project 8, American
Project
Wasteland.
8, that's the one.
Yeah.
Project 8 is fine as well.
I mean, 4 is perfectly playable, but
those games came out when I actually knew somebody at Neversoft, so I played them.
Nice. This is the peak of the form, though. I think.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.
There's a lot else to say.
Tony Hawk's games are fucking incredible.
No, they were at least.
They were.
Yeah.
Tony 5 is such a horrible disaster.
A travesty.
Yeah. All right, what do you got for us, Mike?
You know what game it is tomorrow, Jack? Speaking of series that peaked at the 2s and 3s, it's time for Metal Gear Solid 2.
Whoa.
Metal Gear Solid 100% did not peak at 2.
I beg to differ. It's my favorite game in that series by a large margin, and I will make an argument for it right now.
Iconoclastic pick, but I love you for it.
There's a good argument.
There's a lot of good stuff in that game.
Yeah.
All right, so first of all, a confession. One of the reasons I love this game so much is it's the first Metal Gear Solid game that I played. Since I didn't have a PlayStation 1, I picked this up on PS2, and I played through this game like 6 or 7 times in a row, basically, like trying all the difficulty levels, trying like a no-kill run. Like, I love the mechanics of Metal Gear Solid 2. It is high-speed Pac-Man, basically, where you're just running around this place, just smoking dudes and then screwing up and then running around and hiding in the locker and hoping that you don't get caught. And then you do get caught, and so you're like tranking guys left and right, because I try not to kill people in this game if I can avoid it.
Yep.
And I love the mechanics in this game, and there's no other Metal Gear game I think that gives you this kind of mechanics at this level of fidelity. The first game gets you part of the way there, but you don't actually spend that much time playing the game in the first Metal Gear Solid game, and it like never really develops. And then by the third game, everything is out the window, and it's almost completely different. Like, so this is the game where you got soliton radar, you know, you can see the vision cones moving back and forth, but you also have 100 billion different ways that you can interact with the environment, to mess with the guards or to, you know, use all your different items in different ways. And they give you larger areas than you get in the first game. So I just think it hits that real sweet spot from a gameplay standpoint. And then if you want to talk about the story, this game goes some places.
Let me tell you about memes, not in the internet sense, but in the like classical, like weird psychology sense of the word. And
let's go places.
Yeah, there is some fucking brilliant stuff in the writing of this game, but this is also the Metal Gear game that most would be improved by a decent editor.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I played 4, so I don't know if I can agree with you on this one.
That's
I still, you know what? I played like 2 hours of 4 and then was like, that's enough of that. Thank you.
You made a good choice with your life.
So you played an hour of it and watched an hour of install, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well.
How many cigarettes did Snake smoke?
I learned how to make good scrambled eggs.
Did you? So yeah, the story definitely goes totally bonkers and off the rails, and there are way too many codec calls between Raiden and his girlfriend.
Solid Snake.
But you have
also
to admit
Dr.
this,
Octopus.
The shit that happens in the like the back third of this game is just off the chain.
Yeah.
And in a way that I find it's pretty entertaining. It's pretty weird, and it doesn't take nearly as long to unfold as the crap in
the game.
Doing a cartwheel holding your balls is pretty
good.
Moment.
Through the jejunum of Arsenal gear. Come on.
There was a demo of this game that came out with Zone of the Enders, which I think I spent more time playing that than I did playing through the actual game. Because like
Zone of the Enders is also only like 2 hours long.
Well, no, I mean then the actual game Metal Gear Solid 2, because I played through the tanker a million times, shooting ice cubes and like chasing guys around and picking them up and throwing them overboard and doing all the crazy interactions that you could like this. Like it's really you can't stress enough how novel all that stuff was in 2002 or whenever this game came out.
Nice.
It's just so fucking crazy.
Yeah, and briefly, I will say it looked better than video games did for like the next 5 years. At least the character models.
Yep.
Now they look terrible. What are you gonna do?
They still. Look
I don't think they look terrible.
Technology for you. This game has blocking and like cinematography in a way that also games didn't have for a super long time.
Yep.
Afterwards.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, Kurt, you're up.
I have to ask Eric a question, so in the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
This is it's not against protocol, I suppose. This is very unusual.
I did not. Did you ask me to do that?
Nope.
Okay. If you want to save that for your last thing, I could make that happen, though.
That was I was calling an audible to see if that was a thing.
I think I can make that happen.
So I'm gonna go against Joe's comment about the pinnacle of extreme sports games by saying that my pick for that is SSX Tricky.
Oh.
I thought if someone was going to make an argument, it would be a serious argument that's not BMX XXX. It would be.
It was not. Yeah, it was not.
Why would that not be a serious argument, Joe?
And you sort of forced my hand to pick it just because you mentioned it. I was like, I need to make a case for this now.
It's good.
So I spent way more time playing this game than I spent playing Tony Hawk's, even though I think Tony Hawk's are great and it's a damn fine pick. But for some reason, this game resonated with me a lot more. I think I could more easily pull off the tricks, even though they're not necessarily super different to do.
It's right there in the title.
Yeah.
That's talking about rhyming, Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry.
But it pushed the envelope on sort of the cartoony sort of fun nature of it. It wasn't. I think Tony Hawk's at least 2 and 3 are a little, I don't know, somewhat more realistic, at least in look and things. I don't know about playing, but sort of they definitely didn't go for that. They're not modeling real people. They're not doing any of that stuff. So you have racing and you have tricking and you have the
Right, like that's the biggest difference is that there are other people on the stage as you at the same time, occupying the same space, and you're racing against them while also doing tricks, and it's a pretty different thing for sure.
You also have the a little bit of what we talked about with Burnout, where you're sort of trying to push the envelope so you can get boost and then start going to town, and as you build that stuff up, you get higher air and you get more ability to do style, so it feeds on itself. And there's a big explosion when you hit the tricky, so it's always fun.
If you want to see somebody not hit a tricky, you should watch this footage of me struggling to play this game, because I have not played it in a very long time and I could not remember the controls.
Yeah, I believe that.
I will say that I played this up-resed on PCSX2, and it looks fucking incredible and played like amazing. Like, this is so many of these PlayStation 2 games you can just bump the resolution up, and it's just like, oh yeah, this totally works now. Like, games were so good during this era.
I would make the argument that the PlayStation 2 is the first generation where 3D games finally kind of made it out of that ugly...
Didn't look like balls.
Phase.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, they look like they need to, basically, to get the point across. And so, sometimes up-resing them gets you a pretty decent result.
Exactly.
In a way
the other thing is, as you can see, as Eric's playing through it, right, you have tracks that have multiple paths and secret areas, and you're trying to hit,
I definitely go out of my way to hit one of those secret areas.
Yeah.
A bit of a Hydro Thunder thing going on.
Awesome.
Yep.
Or like Beetle Adventure Racing.
San Francisco Rush.
Yeah, and so just speaking of that, like the Burnout Paradise feels a little bit like there's some DNA from that, and from this in that for that kind of thing. So, all right.
Yeah,
Eric's got
this
2
game is
picks.
awesome. Oh boy.
We're back to you with the final twofer.
Oh no. Well, let's see what's left here. How about I pick? All right, this is gonna be my last pick.
Yeah, you got 2, buddy.
Yeah, I know. So
he's ordering his pick.
I'm ordering them because it's important to me. It's so hard because there's 2 different categories of PlayStation 2 games to me. There are the PlayStation 2 games that were really, really important to me when I was like 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And then there are the PlayStation 2 games that 35-year-old me looks back on and says, "Man, I would love to play that game again today." And I put like 10 minutes to 3 hours in some cases into playing all of these games that I captured footage for, and it's really obvious to me like the games that I would be interested in playing now versus the games that I was into back then. So like for example, I put over 100 hours into both Madden 2002 and Madden 2005. And like those would definitely have been in my top 5. One of those would have been in my top 5 PlayStation 2 games list that I had made in 2004 or whatever.
Right.
But there's like no way for me to justify picking one of them now because they're better Madden games, and also I'm just not that interested in that type of game anymore. So it's really hard for me. I guess I
struggled with that a little bit as well. You're sort of and I will probably mention one of those at the end too.
All right,
I think you're 30 seconds are up, Eric.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically I get a minute because I'm not going to take any time making my second pick. So I'm gonna pick Okami.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put Okami in there.
That is a fantastic
this game.
choice.
Another Clover Studios.
Yeah, Clover had some fucking. That's why everybody's so sad that Clover doesn't exist anymore, because there's a lot of good Clover games out there. But Okami was up until Skyward or not Skyward Sword, Jesus Christ, Breath of the Wild. Until Breath of the Wild came out last year, this was the best 3D Zelda game. In my opinion.
Actually, it's 2 of the best 3D Zelda games.
Right.
I think it's 3 of them, actually.
Sort of the fatal flaw in Okami is that it's like 2 or 2.5 games worth of game in one, and there's a lot of there's a lot of things in it that if you'd split it off into like 3 different games, you could have improved combat and changed things that would have made those different 20-hour sections more interesting. Whereas playing it in a 60-hour chunk, the combat and stuff just gets really boring towards the end of the game. But I think that the first
especially
20
because
hours,
you fight some of those at least one of those bosses multiple times.
Yeah, I think the first 20 hours, the part where you're like learning the controls and learning about the world that you're in and fighting Orochi, the big 8-headed snake monster, and following Sasuno around and doing all that stuff. I think that like that 20-hour chunk of this game is definitely the reason why I'm picking this to be in my top 5 PlayStation 2 games. The other thing is that like the art style in this game is fucking incredible.
Unbelievable.
It's so beautiful. Good. Like when I went back and played like 5 or 6 hours of this game last summer, and even now, like when the first time that you like revive an area is in like all the cherry blossoms fly out and the trees come back to life, and it's such this beautiful sense of organic things growing and thriving that it like makes me weep even now. It's like so gorgeous, and it's like a 15-year-old game, right? And it's such a
art direction, man. It's timeless.
Yeah, it is. It's like the cell shading and the ink outline and the ink powers, and I know there's a lot of really great stuff in Okami. It's a flawed game, but speaking of flawed games, I think I heard my thing beep. Am I correct?
You did. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna go way off the board for this last one because there are definitely a bunch of more worthy picks for this, both in terms of games that I'd be interested in playing now and games that I liked back then at the time. But I don't know, fuck it, man. This is my list, and I'm gonna pick what I want to pick, and so I'm gonna pick Killer 7.
Oh,
because
Killer 7 games that are way too long.
Killer 7 is like Silent Hill 2. It is, and Grand Theft Auto San Andreas to a lesser extent. It is indicative of a sort of a sea change in the types of stories that you could tell in video games, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like
I see it.
Like there are good stories in like Chrono Trigger and other 16-bit and 8-bit RPGs and things, but like Silent Hill 2, is really dark and brooding, and it's psychological, and it's about guilt, and it uses symbolism in a really inventive way. And Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is about race and race relations in America, and I have not played that game in a really long time, and I would love to go back and see how it holds up. But just even the fact that it's set around the LA riots in 1992 is a really interesting place to set a game, and it had a really big effect on me when I played it back then. And Killer 7 slots right alongside those two games, I think. In terms of it,
tell me what this one's about.
It's about this. Well, so it's like the text is about this assassin that kills people and like absorbs their personalities into his body, and then like you play through this thing, taking down this terrorist organization and using the various assassins. Powers
There's
to
a guy in a red leather gimp outfit who guides you.
This game is fucking bonkers. So this is a Suda51 joint, who's most famous, I think, for No More Heroes at this point. But this is his weirdest game, and it all
I
this.
don't know about that.
All this window dressing. And this game looks fucking amazing, by the way. I put this on high res mode because the art style up-reses really gorgeously, and I wish there was like a shooter or mouse and keyboard version of this, because it's basically just a light gun game, which is like the reason why it
it's also 25 hours long.
Yeah, but it's all about this like
a lot of light gun
it's this
game.
Like this 3-pronged culture war, man, between the East and the West and the Middle East, and like how like Japan and America is interactions, and China, and like how that's affected like this young developing area. Yeah, you could
explanation.
You could write multiple theses about what all the different symbolism and stuff in this game is, and I think a lot of it ultimately is just nonsense, but I think that, like I said, there is definitely something like an interesting thought about the way that all these different like world cultures like meet and create friction between each other, and they're all represented by these different like facets of this this young assassin who's like going around and killing other assassins and collecting their personalities. And I don't know. It's fucking weird and bizarre, and one of the strangest video game stories that I've ever seen. And I love the art style, like the music and stuff. Like this is the aesthetic that I love in Hotline Miami, and that like synth
dark synth.
Yeah, like all that stuff is all in this game. Like I didn't even realize some of that stuff was in this game until I went back and played it for this thing. But it's a hell of an experience.
And nice. All the letters, you find a series of letters, and they're all Smith's references.
That's
like
funny.
The band, because the guy is
right.
named, they're all named Smith, and so all the letters you find are references to the band, the Smiths, which is a nice touch.
Time.
You're fucked.
Also, one of my desktops that rotates through on my computer is it's a Dan Smith, which is the one that you're playing.
We're in a tight spot.
Yes.
That's why I was laughing at it earlier, because it's also
from
Oh Brother Where Art Thou?
Yeah,
a reference. Okay, so it's me.
It's you.
So ironically, Eric mentioned the game I was going to pick, which is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Good pick. I really waffled a lot between that and Killer 7 for my last pick.
Yeah. And for the at least partially for the reason that Eric was talking about, it told a unique story for that kind of game that was really interesting and showed the rise of, it had a black protagonist.
Yep.
And his rise up through the city, and then through the region and everything, and then it had all of that stuff, and then it also had all of the crazy random shit you could do out in the world. You have this whole really serious storyline about like you said, race and the LA riots. Not only were at that time, but you actually play a chunk of the game that, like, the final section of the game is during riots. And you're trying to get out before the city just collapses. But
you're also fighting to protect your neighborhood.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
you're trying to control crime, by sort of exercising control over the neighborhood and sort of fighting off the other bad guys.
Yeah. But you can see, like, this opening scene is CJ returning to Los Angeles and being, some cops just show up and they take his money and they put a gun to the back of his head just because they know who he is and he has a reputation.
Yeah.
And it's like scenes like that are the things that like I said, my memories of this game are pretty fuzzy at this point, and I kind of want to go back and look at it
mine too,
through an adult lens instead of
that's part of why I didn't push it higher on my list. It was because I was like, I remember this being really good and having a lot of that to it, but it's been so long since I played it. I will say, like almost every other Rockstar open world game, it's too long.
A little bit. Three huge areas.
About 2/3 of the way through the game, and this is true of pretty much all of them. About 2/3 of the way through the game, you can chop 25% out.
Yeah, almost all of the Las Vegas stuff in this game could have gone away, and it would have been totally fine.
The only game that's not true of is Bully.
Yeah, Bully's great. Bully was in consideration.
If we did a next gen draft, I would absolutely pick Bully.
Yeah.
That is probably the best of these kind of games from Rockstar. But
I think there was a PlayStation 2 version of Bully.
Bully was on PS2, wasn't it?
It was on 360.
I think it's on all of the things.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that. Yeah, it came out in 2006, but there was a PlayStation 2 version of it. It's super weird. So
I'll change my pick.
You can change your pick if you want to.
No, that's fine.
It's weird because the reason I didn't put Bully in consideration is because, like you, I felt like that was a next gen game. There was another weird one, and you should give yourself like 30 more seconds to talk about this because I'm going to eat up some time right now. But Rock Band 2 came out on the PlayStation 2. And it's like, actually, maybe Rock Band 2 is the best PlayStation 2 game, but there's just no logical way to pick that and feel good about it.
You can't pick that one because it doesn't have the DLC.
I guess. I mean, it has. There were DLC packs that you could buy at Walmart. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Kurt. So, what else about San Andreas?
Yeah. So I was gonna say, you have all of that stuff. You have all crazy shit. Like you can go out onto Mount San Andreas or whatever the fuck it's called and like jump off and float for like 2 minutes on a
wingsuit or whatever. Right?
Yeah, wingsuit. Or
there's a jetpack in this game.
There's a jetpack. There's supposedly a Sasquatch somewhere in the game.
This game goes off the rails much more so than any of the other Grand Theft Auto games, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that I really liked about it is that it's sort of
it's before they got
builds
super
to that,
serious.
and like CJ is this like he's kind of like go along, get along in a lot of ways, and it just sort of like, of course, like he starts out like trying to help his friends with a drug deal, and then by the end of the game you're like blowing up the fucking Hoover Dam while flying around in a jetpack. But then at the very end of the game, that's when the riot stuff comes back in, and you sort of circle back around to the neighborhood, and like at the very end of the game,
you basically get drawn back to
like focuses
the first area to deal with it.
Yeah, it like focuses him back in on what was important and what he was doing everything for to begin with. And it's like Grand Theft Auto 4, I felt like that was the game where everybody started using the phrase cognitive dissonance, because the character kept saying over and over again how much he hated violence, and then you would go and do the Grand Theft Auto stuff. And in this game, it doesn't feel that way, because like I said, like CJ isn't talking about how much he hates violence or how much he doesn't want to do these horrible things.
Right.
It's like he's just going along with it because that's what he feels like he needs to do. Yeah, exactly. to protect his neighborhood. And his mom dies at the beginning of this game, and it's like really heartbreaking the way that like he comes back to his neighborhood and meets up with his brother and his old friends. It's really it's a game that it's kind of about family, and there's some really good stuff in it. But like I said, I would need to play it again to make a real comment on how it handles race, because there's a real thin line between it like being authentic and all, but instead of just being like Rockstar copying a bunch of a bunch of like racist tropes from hip hop lyrics and like just like dumping them into this grab bag in this game. It's kind of hard to tell over the distance of time which of those two things it is. But anyway.
Yep. All right, Mike has got 30 seconds to make his last pick.
All right. Well, I think I know what it's going to be. I think I'm going to pick an extremely Mike game, which I don't think...
pick this game. I know what this game is.
You do?
I think so.
Oh, you know because you captured footage for them all.
Yeah, but also I know what it is because we both love this game. I hope it's this game I think it is.
All right. Let's get the suspense out of the way. I'm going to pick Odin Sphere.
Oh, no.
Oh, man. That is...
Eric, not the game you were expecting.
I did not expect that.
Under you.
That's all right. Well, the other game will get picked in the lightning round.
Maybe you're right. Does it involve
have like 5 lightning rounds?
A certain quintessential French actor?
Maybe.
Yeah. That's also great. Odin Sphere is a
Only Lucia 3 didn't come out on...
Odin Sphere is a really weird, unique, cool game, which is also 3 times longer than it needs to be, because I think that was kind of a thing the PlayStation 2 era.
Yeah, definitely.
Every game had to be at least 30 hours long, and in the case of Odin Sphere, I think it's more like 50. But it's super cool and unique and really interesting. It's
something where you repeat shit over and over again too.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah, it's a 2D action RPG with this amazing vanillaware art, which is for the most part not too horny.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with little horny. It's just accurate. When it's like super sexist.
Vanilla horny is weird horny though.
Yeah.
Anyway, amazingly gorgeous game where you run around in this 2D planes, but they loop indefinitely because the idea is that you're supposed to be again on spherical worlds, even if there's not really any.
They're more cylinders than spheres.
Yeah, and they don't even look like cylinders.
Would be more accurate.
They're just left to right stages that loop. Yeah. But like while you're fighting these guys, you're also doing weird stuff like planting trees that bear sheep that you then have to chase down and kill to get their meat so that you can turn them into like dishes and make potions and things out of them.
So you can survive boss fights.
Yeah, and so you can make just the most unbelievably good-looking food whenever you go back to the village. Like this, the people Vanillaware have got some serious, some real serious food fetishism going on, and I am 100% on board.
Yeah, the cooking stuff in this game looks fucking gorgeous.
Oh, it's so good.
I want to eat all of the stuff that you make in the cooking.
It's true.
So I don't know,
crafting stuff.
It is repetitive, but I really like the core loop of the game. I think I think it controls relatively well. It's just like a brawler, but you can use items, and it's fairly challenging, and I like it. You have 5 different characters that you wind up using over the course of the game, and again, if each of them you played for like 3 hours, this would be just a wonderful game that I could recommend to anyone. But you spend like 10 hours with each character, and you see a lot of the same content over and over again. And it does have a couple boss fights where the frame rate gets down to single digits, which is kind of, ridiculous considering it's all 2D stuff. But I don't know. Maybe a software engineer can explain to me why the PS2 had such a hard time with that stuff. Yeah. But it looks real.
There was a release that took care of a lot of those problems a couple years ago. So
yes. Yeah, at some point I'll give it a try, but I think it's still going to be quite long, which is why I haven't rushed.
I feel like Muramasa kind of did the Vanillaware thing better than
I played Muramasa and I kind of got bored after a few hours. I think because of the crafting elements, this game held my attention longer, learning new potion recipes and and making stuff in the field and putting things together. And also like when crafting stuff in the field creates a bunch of experience that you can suck up, so like it's a way to level up your character in the middle of a battle. So I don't know, it's just got a really interesting set of interlocking mechanics that I thought were really nifty. Backed by some phenomenal art and great looking food.
I wanted to like this game so much and just couldn't quite get there, but
it's got problems.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff in it for sure. Yeah. It is fucking gorgeous.
Agreed.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Before Cuphead, this was my like platonic ideal of a 2D game, but then Cuphead came out.
Yeah, hard to beat Cuphead.
It's hard to beat Cuphead.
Time. All right, Joe's last pick.
Boy, I'm actually kind of surprised that this game didn't go.
There's a lot of good games left.
There's a lot of good games left. And there's some
there's some like all-time great
fighting
games
game or anything
left
on here, but actually the game that I have to go with is, and I guess some people would say the third installment of this series is the best one, but I disagree. So I'm going to say the original Devil May Cry.
Does it fill your dark soul with light?
No, Mike. It fills my dark soul with light.
I definitely like this game, but I only played it once a long time ago, so not quite in my personal...
I think I'm going to pick up the new HD collection that just came out.
Yeah, having gone back and played a little bit of both 1 and 3 for this feature.
Two really good games for the price of 3.
Right. Well, but like it still kind of holds up. Like the combat still feels really good, especially like in 1 it's a little bit more loosey goosey, but 3 is like it takes really precise button taps to like effectively do combo stuff, and it made me really want to go back and play that. Especially because I slogged through the insanely difficult original release of that the first time I played it.
Another Clover Platinum person.
Yeah.
Hideki Kamiya.
Yeah.
And this also sort of created a genre, right? Yeah. Like this game,
what they call character action games.
Yeah, character action game. And nobody besides Kamiya was able to match it until Kamiya himself made the first Bayonetta, which I actually think is better than the first Devil May Cry. But
Bayonetta is the best of those, for my money.
Mm-hmm.
But this game has so much batitude.
It does. I actually love
extremely bad.
The same way that I love Leon in Resident Evil 4 and his like your right hand comes off and like all that stuff. Like Dante's like flock off Featherface, like that, all that ridiculous like 90s action hero quipping is I'm an easy mark for all that stuff.
It's really cool because like before this game, like you would have just called this like a hack and slash or like a beat 'em up kind of a thing, and like Joe said, like this is where the technical aspect of this series, this type of game, sort of came to full fruition.
Yeah,
like the combo system where it ranks you as you go,
and tight.
And
it's a lot more noob friendly than God Hand. Like it's a similar evolution of sort of the beat 'em up brawler.
Yeah, I mean this predates God Hand.
Shooting the motorcycle so it doesn't hit him in the face.
Yep, because that's how physics work.
I can't think of this game without thinking of my friend Jim, who talked about how dark, like grim dark, this whole game was. And one of the earliest chapters of the game is called "The Curse of the Bloody Puppets."
But it's not. The thing is, it's not really grim dark. Like this game is
you get a new sword by having it fly off the wall and through your body, and then like lifting yourself the rest of the way.
Yeah, but it's pretty silly. Like it's so silly. Melodramatic and silly that I feel like it's like the people that made it kind of had an idea of what was going on. You know,
you don't write a line.
It is not.
You don't write a line like
"flock
off Featherface" without knowing.
Well, that's like, a translation, so who knows? But
it's probably an accurate translation, though.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's a giant fucking magma spider, right?
Yes, you fight twice.
That's a really good boss fight, right?
The final boss you fight in a biplane, like you know. The upgrades path is really cool. Like you get these fire gloves that you can punch fire into people with.
There's
later.
A bunch of different weapons that you can switch.
The shotgun.
In later games, you could was like the weapon switching was a little bit more fluid, especially in DMC Devil May Cry, which is also a great one of these games. But
which people didn't like, but I actually like the Ninja Theory DMC as well.
Only dumb people didn't like that game. Most people liked it because
that game was better than Devil May Cry 4 for sure.
Oh yeah,
or 2
and 2 also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Devil May Cry 4 has great combat and terrible level design. It's really weird because like it's weird to think that this game's roots was as a Resident Evil sequel.
Yeah,
and
this
that's
was the
part of why the
original
architecture
design for Resident Evil 4.
Right, that's part of the reason why the architecture is what it is and why it feels kind of weirdly out of place with a lot of the character designs and stuff, but it works for sure.
Yeah, it really. I remember playing the demo. The demo came with Code Veronica X, if I remember correctly.
Probably, yeah.
And much like your experience, well, no, you said you spent more time playing the demo than actually Metal Gear Solid 2, but I spent more time playing this demo than playing Code Veronica X because I played through Code Veronica on the Dreamcast, so I really checked it out just to play this demo.
Yeah.
And then I bought this game, I think, right as soon as it came out. Like I was way in on this game.
Yeah. The biggest thing that makes this game feel dated is the fact that it doesn't have a dodge button.
Right.
Whereas most other like more modern third-person action games all have dodge buttons.
Have a roll
to
or
a certain extent.
Yeah.
That's another thing that God Hand did really well.
Yeah, Bayonetta does it great.
Bayonetta is which time
Bayonetta.
Bayonetta is really fucking good, Mike.
It's coming to the Switch, Mike. Like next week or something. Or did it already come out?
It's already out. It's
already out.
Yeah. So. The PC version of that game is also really good.
Yeah, and $10. I should get that. Yeah. This is not really germane to what we're talking about now, though.
All right, so shall we do like a lightning round? I think we're actually not doing too bad on time, so.
No, I'm surprised.
So
wait, is there a game that we universally agree was not until Kurt picked a Grand Theft Auto game?
I thought we were gonna do lightning round first.
Yeah, let's do lightning round.
Okay.
If you want to go off the board with this, it's fine, but I won't have footage for it, so I'll leave that up to you guys. I feel like there's still a lot of good games left.
There are a lot of good games.
How long are we going to get to talk about a lightning round game?
It's lightning round. You got like 30 seconds.
How much footage they're going to be able to show, I guess is my point. So are we going back to Eric, or are we just going to me?
You go. Yeah, you go.
You go.
I go. Oh my god.
Wow.
Okay, there's still no fighting games on this list, so I'm actually going to say Capcom versus SNK 2.
Hey, cool.
Match of the Millennium.
Cool.
That's a game I wish I'd played more of.
It's weird. I didn't like by the time PlayStation 2 came out, I was kind of done with fighting games. Like Soul Calibur was the last one that I was really way into. I feel like the Tekken games that came out on PlayStation 2 were kind of so-so.
Tekken 4 I played a lot.
Street Fighter post Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo I wasn't so much into, but
Capcom versus SNK. So here is this. I'm going to say a possibly controversial statement. At least other people have told me it's controversial, and I've said it in other contexts. Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium, 2001, is my favorite Capcom fighting game, which makes it basically my favorite 2D fighting game like ever.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, Super Turbo or Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or whatever," but like this game, I think is just like perfectly balanced. It gets a lot of the SNK stuff right. The cast is like a really great mix of like familiar faces and weird deep cuts, like Eagle from Street Fighter 1 and. Yeah, man, this game rules.
Everything except for a coherent art style.
It's more coherent than Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I think.
Yeah, I don't like that game, though. All right.
Lightning round.
Eric, cue up. You know what game it is. Let's get some Jean Reno fighting demons.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that game did come out on PS2.
It sure did. Onimusha 3, Demon Siege, which I don't even have a whole lot to say about, except that it was a fun Onimusha game, and it hilariously starred virtual Jean Reno, who spends the first 30 seconds of the game speaking in French before a magical fairy translates everything he says into English for the rest of the game.
Yeah, also he's dressed up exactly like he was in Leon the Professional, which is ridiculous.
It's one of the first instances that I'm aware of a major celebrity just getting scanned whole hog and stuck into a game, and the fact that he's off fighting demons in a pretty competent third-person action game is just the icing on the cake.
Before or after? What the fuck's it called?
Apocalypse? I believe it's after.
That was after.
Apocalypse was a PlayStation game.
Apocalypse was a PlayStation game.
Also, there's a Pitfall game with a likeness and voice of
Bruce Campbell,
in it. That was
they did a good job with him.
Oh yeah, this
does
looks
like
way
Jean
more
Reno.
like Jean Reno than the Apocalypse guy, which is just a really kind of blurry, shitty texture of fucking Bruce Willis.
It's like a face scan of Bruce Willis and put it on.
I was gonna say, it certainly looks better than the face scan
smeared onto a cube.
Yeah. So yeah, this game starts out with this Leon the Professional looking motherfucker in France, and then if you I'll skip forward a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're in ancient Japan fighting demons.
I like all the Onimusha games.
Yeah. I only ever played the first one, but this made me want to play this.
This is the first one, and it just didn't click with me, honestly.
Yeah.
The combat around the same time as Devil May Cry, and I was just
lightning round.
The combat in this feels a little Dark Souls-y, which kind of made me want to go back and check it out. A little
it's
slower,
a good game, and it's
more
ridiculous
than the Devil May Cry types.
All right, fine, Kurt. What's your pick?
My pick is one I didn't give to Eric because I thought of it because I played it on the Xbox. Beyond Good and Evil.
Sequel's coming out.
The sequel is coming out maybe someday, maybe.
It's an open world survival game, isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the original.
Great characters, interesting gameplay. You have the picture taking stuff that you do. There's a kind of a cool corporate corruption story that's going on. An interesting world that you run around in and sort of find some stuff out about, but not everything. I had a lot of fun playing that game.
Hey, Kurt, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Could you pretend that you picked Rez, and just for me say I picked Rez here?
Yeah. So Rez is also on my list, and I went back and forth on those things. So Rez.
Okay.
Because it's fucking amazing.
I don't really like Rez. So that's why I captured this footage of Rez. Here it is. Here's Rez. All credit to Anthony Rogers for this, coming up with this visual representation of my favorite all-time joke that Rez is just fucking wallpaper or a screensaver.
I actually do like Rez.
I don't really like Rez. I think it's kind of boring, but it's really pretty. So
it's like Panzer Dragoon at a rave.
Every time I play it, my opinion changes. Area 5's cool. Great remix of Mind Killer.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't really like the music that much. It doesn't work for me. I think it looks beautiful though.
All right, Eric, what's your lightning pick? It's not Rez.
All right. Well, this is actually the game that I thought you were gonna pick.
Oh, I still haven't picked it.
No, you still haven't picked it because I believe you've told me that you wrote a guide for this game at one point. Yeah. Yes. So I'm gonna shovel. This is definitely a pick that is more in line.
That is
with
a Mike-ass game.
This is definitely more in line with my picks of
your aesthetic.
Well, of the time and less of like what I would do in modern times.
How it would hold up now.
You should say what it's called.
It's called Baldur's Gate: Dark Alliance.
Yeah.
Which I played.
That's a fun game.
I played this game to completion like 4 or 5 times with different friends because it had a co-op mode and different characters, and it's basically just a more action-oriented version of like Diablo.
Yeah, it's Diablo that plays nice on a console, and its levels are not randomized, which personally I prefer.
Yeah, it's
Pinata Monsters.
It has that in common with the Titan Quest.
I was gonna say, what was that one we played a bunch during Extra Life 2 years ago?
But yeah, it's totally just the Pinata Monsters. I also love the water physics in this game.
I love that they're gelatinous
the water looks
the water looks really good for a PS2 game.
Yeah, it's
For a PS2 game, this game looks astoundingly good.
Yeah, it's more like semi-set
way
Jello
out,
than it
so
is
it's
water,
kinda,
but it just looks really cool.
Oh, the game zooms in a lot of the time, so you can open breasts on the female characters when they're talking to you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Nice.
Hey, there's
So is this game too horny or not too horny?
This game is fucking horny.
But it's I really like you go through the sewer area, which is kind of boring, but then there's like a swamp
on
and
a
there's
scale of 1 to Porky.
ancient crypts and there's like that big weird
dark elf lady who pole dances for you.
Yeah, there's that like big weird
Jesus.
onyx like tomb thing that you fight through at the end and the
swamp, the castle,
cool.
the caves.
There's a lot of cool stuff in it.
The 3 characters all play really different. There's a secret bonus character if you want. You
can
unlock.
Swords, hammers, bows. Says the
So like I said, I played this game. There's a game facts guide for this game that I wrote, which is how to finish the game with the archer on the super hard difficulty level, which is really, really hard.
It's really hard.
Nice.
It's not a very good guide.
Yeah,
but
that's a good game.
How horny is that?
It's a good one of those. The sequel is also really good. It adds in a bunch of Diablo 2 stuff with like gem sockets and things,
Baldur's
which is interesting.
Gate
But
you can't play it because it costs $200 to buy a copy.
Yeah, I have a friend that has a copy of that. I should try and get that from him before he.
They also made Champions of Norrath, which is like this but boring.
Yeah, the Champions of North.
You should get that, and then we can play it for Extra Life next year.
But anyway, all right. So we need one more game for 20.
So
is there anything?
So
like,
the consensus
that
pick, maybe we didn't pick any God of War games.
I'd be totally fine with God. I didn't think I would like God of War 2 that much, but when I went back to it, the way that it feels when you flick those chain swords out and hit guys feels fucking amazing. Like it's so good.
It has
a ton
of impact.
I captured some footage of it, and then like this owl makes this giant statue of Hermes come to life, and it's like punching through walls and picking you up and slamming you against things as you're fighting guys, and that's another great example of like the sense of scale that the PlayStation 2 had. But
I mean, I would nominate the first mission of the original God of War.
I don't.
When you fight the Hydra.
Yeah, the Hydra's really good. This is also very good. The God of I had never played the third one, but playing this kind of made me want to, just because it's a God of War that I have not played.
The third game is not.
It's not so much. Maybe I should. I'm
actually interested in the new one.
That seems interesting.
The new one, yeah. The first one, I think, is the only one that I played through the entire.
Well, I captured all this footage. So is there anything else that you guys want to give it a shout out to here? Is our honorary 25th game?
I don't. There's nothing else for me that I think is like that I had on my list that I feel is like a
must-have,
quintessential, right? Like I could name a wrestling game, you know.
You mean like Fire Pro Wrestling Returns?
Yes. The problem with that is, of course, that Fire Pro Wrestling World improves on it in like every measurable way.
Yeah, but check this out, Joe. I picked a character that is definitely not Andre the Giant and a character that is definitely not Bull Nakano, and had them wrestle in an exploding barbed wire match, which seems pretty dope.
I just want to say, watching you open that door in God of War by mashing the circle button makes me want to denominate that game.
Yeah, but I showed in that clip, the harder you push the button, the faster he animates in a way that is completely hilarious and awesome.
It was Heavy Rain before Heavy Rain,
which was
that's
not
right. Pressure sensitive.
Actually, I will say I think this game looks better than the new one. Like I like the slightly lower res thing. It makes the joints on the characters a little less obvious.
I think
I need to spend some time playing this game.
I think you can low res the sprites on the new one, but I just haven't done it.
A little less paper dolly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a good ass Andre the Giant and a good ass Bull Nakano.
Yeah, it sure is.
I just want to say that I played a shit ton of Gran Turismo 3 on PlayStation.
I was going to actually mention that's not a game that I've played a lot of, but I feel like it's one of the sort of quintessential.
I think that Gran Turismo 3 actually made me a better driver in real life.
So the weird thing for me is that when I think of Gran Turismo, I think of 1 and 2, and everything after that, I don't think I ever played any of the PlayStation 2 or 3 Gran Turismo games.
Gran Turismo was the first video game that I ever saw where the first time I saw it, my brain thought it was a photograph instead of a video game.
Oh yeah, that's legit.
I actually played this in up-res mode, and it looks pretty fucking good, like even by modern standards.
So there is a game that I did just think of that wasn't on my list, but I will tell you. So I bought a PlayStation. I waited outside of Best Buy at like 4 a.m. the day that the PlayStation 2 came out. It's weird how you remember certain things, right? Like I remember that whole day.
Alex is right.
Alex is wrong.
I waited outside Best Buy and I got my PS2, and then I had to go to rehearsal for the school play, and so like it was a Saturday rehearsal, so I didn't get to play my new PS2 until I got home. But when I got home, my friends and I played a shitload of Time Splitters.
Those are good games.
I've decided that Alex is right.
What? Okay, we need to talk about this elephant in the room then. Alex thinks that we should have nominated Final Fantasy 12.
It's definitely worth mentioning.
It's worth mentioning. It's one of the best looking games on the console. It's the only game that I played on the PS2 where it felt like they actually needed a higher resolution to show off the art assets in the game.
They definitely do. So I captured all this footage in high res mode, and this game looks fucking amazing in high res mode.
Also, it's super boring, and it's like a 60-hour game where you don't do anything.
I really want to get a Steam version just came out that has like a 2x and a 4x fast forward mode. And it seems like the ideal way to play this, because this game definitely suffers from that disease of more, where the world is just bigger than it needs to be, because it's just like it takes 2 or 3 times as long as it should to run from point A to point B, and there's not enough stuff. Yeah, and the answer would not be to populate it with more monsters, because then with the encounter rate higher, it would just be even more boring and sloggy. The actual answer would be just to shrink the world size by half, or give you the ability to just speed everything up a lot, which seems like a good idea. But I really like the story.
The political story.
Yeah.
I liked it until it turned into a totally different thing.
There's that guy with the crazy sunglasses.
That's because there were issues.
There was some.
I know there were issues, but that's the game we got.
Great music.
It's true.
I like the level up system in this game too. Like
and Balthier's fucking great.
Yeah, Balthier's great.
Yeah, but Fran is really embarrassing.
I don't know. Like the character.
Is she the horny bunny girl?
She's a Playboy bunny.
Yeah, literally.
I have a soft spot for
her voice is cool.
Vaguely French accented voice acting.
So I'm alone on Time Splitters and Time Splitters 2. Then.
I like Time Splitters. I had Time Splitters 2. It was a fun party game for a bunch of people.
It's playing the wrong window.
They were decent games.
So one of the 2 things that I said, I'll probably talk about this later. I put Guitar Hero on my list.
Yeah,
I played a lot of Guitar Hero.
I played the shit out of the first Guitar Hero, and I had a ton of fun with it, and it was really, really great at the time. But I also was like, almost none of the music is original, and the gameplay was, way refined for Rock Band and so on and so forth. But that was that dichotomy that Eric was talking about of at the time versus now.
What's that? Oh, Guitar Hero. You could just pick Rock Band 2 instead.
But the PS2 version of Rock Band 2 is not. I'm
sure it's totally fine, and you don't need a lot to play a Rock Band game. Also, trying to play Guitar Hero with a fucking controller, as you can see in this video, is a goddamn nightmare.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I would have tried to USB my guitar my Rock Band guitar into the emulator and try to get it to work.
Yeah. I would say one iconic game that we didn't mention and that I personally would not mention in 2018, but definitely would have been on a 2015 list is Ico.
Yeah,
which is
I had
a
that
goddamn gorgeous game and a really incredible puzzle box that is also too big, and there's way too many encounters with the shadow guys. But
I actually waffled on exactly that. Like I was like,
I tried to
should be on the list. I just basically said I'll go with Shadow Colossus instead.
I think Ico was important.
Shadow Colossus is absolutely better than Ico.
Oh yeah, for sure.
100%.
But I think Ico was important for showing that you could make a game that wasn't all about like explosions and action
and fighting and killing.
That was really contemplative.
It actually
and,
would have
quiet
been better without any combat whatsoever in most cases. Yeah,
I would have been totally fine with that.
Just the feeling that you get, and this still holds true today. This is the one sort of. Like the most important lasting impact of this game is just like the feeling of grabbing Yorda by the hand and kind of like tugging her along.
Pulling her,
It's
the way she sort of
feels really good.
There's a little pull and push.
Yeah,
as
like
you do it.
Like she's a person instead of just a thing that you have to like try to get to the other end of the level.
And the gut punch at the end of the game.
Yeah,
like got me so hard.
Yep, absolutely. And it's still kind of pretty. It kind of like some of it doesn't hold up too well. I honestly think that this is a game that needs a re-release and some reworking, but
yeah, it did get a high res.
There's a PlayStation 3 version, but like I mean, it needs some fucking work.
It needs some editing.
Yeah, because trying to play the PlayStation 3 version was what convinced me that it wasn't such a good game. Like, and that was like 5 years ago. It definitely probably wouldn't hold up as well now, but it is a very important in terms of tone and atmosphere.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Not a game that I want to rush back and play again, but I really appreciated going through it when.
Exactly.
So looking over some best of the PS2 lists and games that we haven't talked about yet, in terms of not games that I necessarily think. Some people have mentioned this list I'm looking at now has Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts 2 in the top 5.
Thank you.
No. I like Kingdom Hearts. I played through both of those games and I like them okay, but like the combat is even more dated than the Dark Cloud 2 combat, and those games are kind of like a lot of the level design is just bad.
The first game has terrible level design.
Yeah, it's just like these boxes with these really bad platforming sections, and it's kind of bad. But like it is, those games are just really carried by the novelty of the interactions between Sephiroth and Winnie the Pooh or what the fuck ever. But
right.
Yeah, the one that I said I'm not gonna put on my list, but I wanted to make a comment about was Final Fantasy 11, specifically Chains of Permania.
I was surprised you didn't put that on there. But
played that game for like 8 years.
Yeah, I know.
I played 2 of those years. I was playing that expansion with like 6 or 5 other people, and we played through that whole thing. And it was, all the things that you used to love about playing, Final Fantasy games is the epic storyline and big combat with bosses and all this kind of stuff. And I had such a sense of both, camaraderie with playing with other people and sort of trying to puzzle out how does this thing work and how do we make this, happen, and this fight needs us to do X, Y, and Z. We tried that and that didn't work, so we try other things. And the sense of accomplishment, we finally got to the end of it and got through it. But the game as it stands doesn't exist anymore. And you had to have played it at the time. It's really punishing to play.
It was an MMO on the PlayStation 2, though.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
It was, and it worked.
Yeah,
but it was essentially it took its lead from EverQuest, and so it had penalties for death.
It had like corpse runs and stuff.
To not corpse runs, you couldn't get your corpse. You still had your stuff, but you would get an experience penalty to die for dying. So you'd like level up. You'd be out like partying with someone, and you'd level up, and then like your next fight, you'd get killed, and you'd level back down.
Yeah, I never played that at all. It just didn't appeal to me. But
I had friends who did though, who were really into it.
Yeah, I queued this game up to show some footage because, despite all the huge problems this is by far the most problematic game in the Persona series. I'm talking about Persona 4. 5 to a little bit lesser of extent, and 3 is probably the one that is the least offensive to me. But this game, if you could remove even 30 or 40% of some of the bullshit with Yosuke and the gay panic dungeon and all that shit.
Wait, there's a whole gay panic dungeon?
Oh, yeah. It's really bad. Wow. You know all those really horrible gay stereotypes? This game has them all, and they are never tried to put in a positive light. That's this character
have to beat the gay out of kanji.
Yeah, you literally kind of beat the gay out of kanji. It's really awful. And then there's a character that is kind of transgender, but obviously transgender people don't really exist, so she can't possibly be transgender, and it's really it's pretty awful. There's a lot of awful stuff, but this game has Chie, and it has Nanako, and it has some really great things in it. Nanako and Chie are 2 of my favorite video game characters. The way they nailed this shy little girl and and her interactions and her relationship with the character and Dojima and stuff there's some really great stuff in this game. Unfortunately, it's marred by a lot of not so great stuff. But
some other games that I'm seeing in some lists that we haven't talked about are Mark of Kree, which I guess a lot of people liked.
Yeah,
I know Kurt's a big fan of that. That game's cool. I like it too.
Alien Hominid, which we didn't.
Obviously,
that's not a bad game.
It's not.
Obviously, the game we should have put down was Yanya Kabbalista.
I would not pick.
The game that comes with a little
skateboard to put on your
skateboard for your fingers.
Yeah, I would not pick Alien Hominid as a noteworthy PlayStation 2 game outside of the fact that it's what launched the behemoth.
Yeah, but it was a Newgrounds game first.
Yeah,
right.
But compared to Castle Crashers, that game is kind of trash.
Right.
It's not trash. It's okay.
I don't know, the Maximo games come up, Twisted Metal Black.
Joe asked me to get footage of Gradius and Contra's Shattered Soldier, so I'm going to show that too.
Man, that game is rough.
I like the first Disgaea.
This Gradius game was awesome. I'm not so sure about that Contra game though.
Gradius 5 is super good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shattered Soldier. I would if I had picked one of those, I would have picked Gradius 5 because Shattered Soldier is way too cruel.
It's punishing as shit.
You must memorize to advance because you can't get past the third stage unless you get 100%.
Right after the first boss that you run into in that game, there's a place where you're climbing a wall and a bullet comes into the top 1/8 of the screen from off screen and hits you every single time. So the only way to know that that's coming is to die a bunch of times and then memorize it and then dodge it when you get to that point. That's such bullshit.
Yeah. That game is over. I mean, if you're into certain it's definitely not even in my top probably 5 Contra games, but I do still like it. Gradius 5 was co-developed by Treasure, which is kind of an interesting circle of life.
I never played Gradius 5, but that game seemed really pretty cool, and I kind of want to play some more of that.
Yeah, I think Gradius Gaiden for the PS1 is the best Gradius game, but Gradius 5 is pretty good.
I mean, I think there are just a huge number of games for the PS2. I don't know what the total is, but it's one of
thousands. I think it's thousands.
Yeah,
plural.
2,000 or 3,000 or something like that.
I mean, even there's a lot of games that aren't great, but are also noteworthy or interesting, like Silent Hill 4 and Silent Hill 3. 4 in particular because of the weird way that the story is told in that. Kurt asked me to cap footage of Amplitude, which is a really cool early music game.
I like Frequency better, but yeah.
I'm looking
through the one with the rock soundtrack. Right?
Amplitude has rock, Frequencies electronic. I think that the way that the game works makes more sense with electronic music than with rock. Because it's all these. Well, you're basically remixing the track in real time, and every time you hit one of those gates, everything drops out again, and I think it makes more sense with electronic music.
And we mentioned the Grand Theft Auto series with San Andreas, but it's really hard to quantify just how much of an impact Grand Theft Auto 3 and then Vice City had on literally every video game that has come out since then.
I pretty much was which one of these 3 do I pick?
Yeah. San Andreas is the best in the series. I haven't played 5 yet, but San Andreas is the best that I've played in the series, in my opinion. But Vice City, the style and
the aesthetics and all that stuff,
right? And there is no cognitive dissonance in that game whatsoever because Tommy Vercetti is a fucking psychopath.
He's a piece of shit.
Yeah, and that game makes no bones about that, which is also kind of an interesting thing.
Also, it introduced motorcycles.
Yeah.
The only one of those that I actually played to completion was 3. I never played.
Yeah.
I mean, I played the other 2.
I mean,
but I didn't
3 was a revolution. When I bought 3, I had friends over. It was during the summer, and I had friends that came over and played it for hours and hours on end, every single day because
I had somebody
it was
tell me that
novel and original.
That they played that game, but they didn't have a memory card. I was just like, what? And so they would just fuck around for hours and cause mayhem and do all this, and I'm like, well, you play games way different than I do.
Yeah, never seen anything like it before. I don't know. Is there anything else that we need to shout out, or? I mean, there's even there's B tier.
The Sly Cooper.
Yeah,
game.
Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter are both really good franchises. That
they are. Sly 2.
It's weird because the PlayStation 2 has so much good stuff that even the second and third tier stuff is still outstanding.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I got the same feeling to making this list that I did when we did the PS1 list, is that there's so much good stuff to choose from that even though I got locked out from, I'd say that Katamari and Ratchet and Clank that you guys picked are the 2 games that I really wish that I could have gotten on my list. Yeah. But even so, I'm able to put together.
Shadow of the Colossus would be the one that I So we still haven't hit a consensus on what number 25.
It's all these games.
It's the rest of the PS2
library. So for me, Mike, I would say that I compare this more to the Super Nintendo draft, because like the PlayStation draft, there's a lot of like rough edges, but like Super Nintendo is just like a million great games, and also like everybody had a good enough handle on the technology to do a bunch of interesting things in terms of aesthetics and story and gameplay mechanics, and like that's what the PlayStation 2 was. I
agree that the consoles have a certain similarity to them, but in terms of the draft and the Super Nintendo, I think that there are a certain number of games that stand out way above the rest on the Super Nintendo, and I think on the PlayStation 2 it's more of a level playing field.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of great PlayStation 2 games.
There's the quality on average is good for so many games.
Let me tell you guys about. I just played Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga recently.
Oh, yeah.
That game is fucking great. I thought about drafting that. Like that game is fucking amazing. That's a PlayStation 2 RPG.
There are two of those, right?
Yeah, I would say that it's arguably almost, or if not as good as like Persona 3 and 4. Like it's just like a step behind those. And there's not as much homophobia, so it's great. And NBA Street Volume 2 is a fucking amazing video game. Like as a 3D like reinterpretation of the NBA Jam games with a trick button and all that stuff. Like those games are great. And I mentioned Madden, but I played like hundreds of hours of the PS2 Maddens. Like that's when sports games finally kind of came of age. Like NBA 2K games were great. The NHL games.
Some of the lists I was looking at, people were talking about ESPN presents 2K5, NFL 2K5, which is the last
I was always more of a Madden
2K
guy,
game.
but yeah, the 2K football games were also very good.
Look, there's enough games on the system that we could talk about it for the rest of our lives.
Yep, Spider-Man 2.
The Spider-Man games are pretty good.
Yeah, and, swinging in Spider-Man 2 is like a thing that I will never forget.
SmackDown Here Comes the Pain might have been the last great WWE video game.
I 100%. I co-signed, man. That game.
Actually,
awesome.
All Stars was probably the last great WWE game, but
that's a different thing. Doesn't have that weird story mode. Nobody's putting salt in anybody's game.
Nobody has put salt in anybody's game. That's right. Yeah, man. Soul Calibur 2, like I think everybody thinks the GameCube version is the best because you can play as Link, but it's still really good.
Which is this the one with Spawn or?
No, it's Heihachi.
Okay. That's pretty good. That's better than Spawn.
Yeah, Spawn is in the Xbox version. The only one of those cameos that makes sense is Link in the GameCube version.
Also, other things that I made a giant list. Psyops is a really interesting game that's maybe not super great, but
what about Psychonauts?
And Psychonauts is the other one I wanted to mention. It's weird because I almost think of that as a PC game now because it's been available on PC for so long. But I played it on PlayStation 2, and that jumping in and out of people's heads and like centering the level design on a character was a really novel concept. Still is. Yeah. I'm really looking for. Man, I hope that new one's good.
I do too.
That's right. They're making it. Yeah,
Dragon Quest 8 also. Shout out to Dragon Quest 8. It's best Dragon Quest game. And that game also, that's a game that fucking looks amazing up-res for the same reason that Okami and...
and it's a similar...
really, simple, anything with simple textures and tends to up-res really well. Color, space. So anyway, that's the PlayStation 2. It was great. It was a great time to be playing
hell of a console.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Check out these water effects in Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance.
None of that Jello.
Play the game on the hardest level.
Use Mike's guide.
Use Mike's guide. If this is the first of these that you've listened to from us, or watched, I guess, really, from us, then I would say to you that I am in the process of making videos out of the other ones as another part of our extra life.
We should have a little talk about that, Joe.
So, we will have a little talk about that once we're off the air. But it's happening. I promised it by the end of the year, or by the next Extra Life, that those would be done. There are 4 of them, so expect to see those coming up on YouTube in the nearish future. And I think that's it, right?
I think so. Do we want to recap?
Just put Phantom
because it's still up on the screen, but if you're listening to this, I want to get...
if you're working and you're not watching the video...
There's been some fucking shit going on for me, so I have not had time to get our Game of the Year show up in a podcast form, but I would like to get that up and this up in that format sooner or later. So I feel like we should go over this just real quick if you're picking up the audio version. Yep. So Katamari Damacy, Shadow of the Colossus, Persona 3, Metal Gear Solid 3, Resident Evil 4, Final Fantasy X, because it's the one where you kill Flame.
It's the one you play as Mega Man X.
Yeah. Final Fantasy BMX Triple X.
Yeah, Silent Hill 2, Dark Cloud 2, Burnout 3 Takedown, Ratchet and Clank 2, Prince of Persia, God Hand, Tony Hawk 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, SSX Tricky, Okami, Killer 7, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Odin Sphere, Devil May Cry, and then our lightning round games were Capcom versus SNK 2, Onimusha 3, Beyond Good and Evil, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, and then the at number 25 is a tie between the 150 other really good PlayStation 2 games.
Yep.
Go buy yourselves a PlayStation 2 today, kids.
Yeah, or just
PlayStation 3 with backwards compatibility.
Buy a bunch of used games, and then if you can get a PlayStation 3 with backwards compatibility, that's great. Or buy a bunch of the ports, the emulated versions on PlayStation 4, or just download PCSX2 and just play these games, because unless you're buying them on PS4, nobody that worked on the games is getting any money for them anyway. So. I was really impressed by PCSX2. Like, that thing's fucking great now. If you play in the normal resolution and everything, almost every game runs well at this point. It's really cool.
Nice.
So, thanks for joining us for another On the Stick video game draft.
Thanks for doing everything, Eric.
We should, I just realized number 25 should be Jackass, because it's one of the only games that runs in 1080 on the PlayStation 2.
Oh my god.
How forward thinking.
Yes.
All right, good night.
So P means something else in that
one. Anyway. Bye.
Bye.